That's coaches in the game, we really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmets casket is top. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, eighth place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision, we got too many. Tick your tech. Oh man, shit. They got us fucked up. Army, regroup. We pledge always to have that edge. We don't fire warning shots. Competition just dropped. We locked and loaded before lock. Whatever the time, yeah. Do you even correlate?
Being the best requires a willingness to outwork your competition. There's always someone smarter, faster, sharper, more naturally gifted to come around.
Welcome in. This is FantasyFling with the FS Army. Doing a little earlier review this week than prior. So if you like this first thing Monday morning, go ahead and give me a like button, comment, let me know. Otherwise, maybe I'll go back to Monday night review. But let's go ahead and get into it. What won the Millie Maker this week? High scoring week, pretty crazy. Royal Pain, Emir won the Millie Maker, so we'll be able to look at Royal Pain's lineup and kind of overall MME strategy. And shout out to Burns, author of How to Win the $1 Million Game, DFS Army staff. He was running hot in this thing and actually was second place with Keenan Allen well into the fourth quarter of this slate. So he had a really good chance to win it. In the end, the Dak stacks kind of chased him down, and Royal Pain was able to bring it home. But it was fun sweat to watch, and shout out to him because he put so much effort into the Millie Maker. Given the secrets weekly show, that is something that is on this channel. So if you have never seen How to Win the $1 Million Game and Millie Maker secrets, make sure you are subscribed to that channel and hit that notification button when they go live every Thursday night. But this lineup, I think one takeaway for me is, in hindsight, we really probably should have been more on this game, this stack of Dak. They had the highest projected team total of 28 points. And, obviously there's the threat of, New York isn't going to do anything and they're just going to run the ball and Dak's not going to get there. There's also the other side of that where the highest projected team total is kind of an indicator of what might happen in that game. And they ended up vastly exceeding it. Dak went crazy, 41 points. They just kept throwing well into the fourth quarter. They're up, 35-7, and they're still throwing. So Dak, CeeDee Lamb, and Brandon Cooks, this stack just went nuclear. I think we had, you have well over 120 points just right there off the three. And then we did have another little stack. Fact, what it was, I think, was this isn't coming up right. Okay, so yeah, he had a double. That's right. He had a double tight end build. And the other stack was Trey McBride and Arizona D. So very contrarian lineup, 102%. It's been a while since we've seen a lineup that low total team ownership. So that was pretty good to see, really just ate a couple spots of just eating a lot of chalk. Rachaad White chalk. And honestly, he didn't 4X. He just did enough at 5,800. Najee was a little chalky as well. He was popping on optimals for DFS Army's domination station, as well as White. So, those are some of the chalk areas. And really, CeeDee Lamb wasn't that chalky at like 13%, given the spot and everything. But where he really got different was Dak and Brandon Cooks. So, Dak was 7%. Like I said, the field was not on him. Should have been. And then Cooks, there's your 1% player. Keenan Allen was low owned. So, there were several guys under 10% that really smashed the slate. And TJ Hawkinson, the only reason that TJ Hawkinson wasn't high owned. It was because a report came out Sunday morning that he was going to play limited snaps and only be in key situations. And myself fell to the report, myself included. These reports that come out Sunday morning is so maddening sometimes, because it's like if you're over the field on this player and you see a report like that, of course it feels like they're not going to touch the ball at all, and you're just going to be tilting your ass off. And then if you go ahead and edit your lineups and fade that player, well, then they score 33 points, and this ended up being a great leverage spot. I think sometimes just ignore, unless it comes like directly from Adam Schefter, just ignore the report, because a lot of those big names have screwed us before. But I digress. TJ Hawkinson, this ended up being one of the leverage plays for this lineup. So what we saw here was a QB +2. And then I guess there, kind of another stack of Trey McBride and Arizona D, and then a lot of one-offs. So we had tight end in the flex, and, really high scoring week, 260 points. And just looking at the Millie Maker so far, my little spreadsheet here, we have 2 weeks in a row where it's been over 250 points. We have a 247 point average. So still that target is right about 250 points to win the Millie Maker. And like I said, this was a very contrarian week. Since week 2, that was the highest. I guess the most contrarian week was week 2, it was 80%. Week 7, we had 107%. We had 104% week 4. Then we had 102%. So the total ownership average is still at, it's a 119. So it's under 130. So keep that in mind. It's actually under 120. So when you're building your lineups, you want to make sure that you can get contrarian. So let's kind of look at the MME strategy of Royal Pain here. Now, we had all of his lineups, you will see, were QB +2. So, and obviously this was a higher scoring week. So this was one of the weeks when you wanted to have QB +2. So we have Dak, CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks. And obviously there's no bringbacks, because why would you force a bringback when you're heavy on Dak stacks and you're going against the Giants, and you pretty much feel like they're just going to curb stomp the Giants, and that's exactly what they did. So all QB +2, a lot of Dak. We obviously saw tight end in the flex for the winner. More tight end there. This one has CJ Stroud, and that's a wide receiver in the flex, but CJ Stroud +2. This one did have a bringback, and it's kind of what I noticed, what we noticed with a lot of these lineups is the bringbacks will come when you have great optimizer settings like we do at DFS Army, and you expect that game to be one of the game environments that you want to target. So there's certain features you can use, like to boost the other side, to kind of just naturally boost projections for those players so that it happens naturally. Joe Burrow, Chase, Boyd, and Noah Brown, for example. But you notice on the Dak stacks, there were no New York Giants. So that is something that a top tier optimizer like DFS Army Domination Station has. And by the way, if you want access to the optimizer, the coach's notes, in fact, we're gonna show some of the takedowns that we had this week. Let's go ahead and get into that. If you want access to all this so you can have takedowns too, you could try a free month. It's in the video. If you've seen enough and you are ready to commit, use code FantasyFling at checkout for 10% off a VIP subscription. So we got some small stakes takedowns here. We like those too. Takedowns are takedowns. Some good ROI. You can see just $12 in there, 1,397, and this was just on NFL. And then the big takedown over on FanDuel this week, Marvin JD was $6,000. So congrats to Marvin. Let's go ahead and kind of look at his exposures for Royal Pain here. So we got Joe Burrow, 20%. And that's always surprising to me to see, not a ton of exposure to the winning stack a decent amount, definitely positive leverage. So, it's one of those things where positive leverage is so key in DFS and MME. Like, you don't have to be all in on a player to take down a large field GPP. You just have to have enough of them. So, we're talking 150 lineups here. So 17% times, it's early. I'm not doing math in my head. Times 150. You got 25 lineups of Dak. So that's more than enough. Didn't need to be 50% Dak, 60%. So really, Joe Burrow was the highest exposure, 20%, and then Dak right behind CJ Stroud. So on to the right quarterbacks. Great mix, and with Jared Goff as well. So no quarterbacks over 20%. At running back, just avoided a lot of the landmines. So Pollard and Mixon under on these guys. So just under on Mixon, almost even with the field, and a little bit under on Tony Pollard. But, positive leverage, just being under, a little bit under on some of the guys that completely failed. Najee did well. Rashad White, as we saw, did pretty well. None of these guys smashed, but running back, that's kind of what it was this week. So Aaron Jones, same thing. He was kind of bummed this week with A.J. Dillon getting a bunch of carries inexplicably. I feel like Geek called this Aaron Jones being a smash spot, and then all of a sudden it'll be a 10-carry game for A.J. Dillon. Austin Eckler, not a GPP winning score, but did pretty good. So did Kenneth Walker and Singletary. These guys both did great. So really spread out the running back exposures. No running back above 29%, a lot between 10 to 20%. And then at wide receiver, didn't really go all in on any wide receiver. Had 31% Lamb, which was, almost plus 20% of the field. Had Chase, had Trent Narwin. So a lot of these guys that you really needed. Tyler Boyd could have had an even better day. I wish he would have, because he dropped a touchdown and had a lot of Boyd and Irwin. Keenan Allen, just hardly positive leverage on Keenan Allen, but 10% from 150 lineups, that's 15 lineups. So DK Metcalf, Tank Dell, just even there with these guys. And actually under on Amon-Ra and Noah Brown and Hopkins. So tight end, didn't go too high on anyone. And I think kind of that's part of the reason this lineup was able to make it, is because like Sam Laporta, for example, if you had 50, 60% Sam Laporta, this lineup probably is not getting to the nuts because he didn't do nearly enough. Brock White caught one of his touchdowns, just smash spot, but he didn't get there. And that's tight end variance. That's why typically, sure, on a slate like this, you want to play double tight end. It's always viable for GPPs. But I think that's kind of why you want to spread out exposures, because we see it time and time again that tight end just crashes your lineup. Ingram, Hawkinson, enough Hawkinson. So didn't even have a ton. I'm guessing probably kept exposures to the point where it was positive leverage, but also didn't want Hawkinson to absolutely crush you if he didn't play. And then, one thing that stands out, fading Dallas defense, we saw they didn't make value. They did not make value. So you have a $4,400 defense, and I think they scored maybe 11 points. It was 11 points, I think, at some point. And then the Giants scored. So I'll have to look at that in a second, but I think it was like 11 points. So it's positive EV to fade chalk defense, to fade chalk tight ends over the long run. Sometimes, yes, it's going to certainly burn you. But I think overall, when you see a defense, and I kind of talked about this the other day, on my cash video is when you see like the Broncos, for example, they had a couple years ago, it was a COVID year. There was Kendall Hinton was in at quarterback. Didn't really even matter that they had a wide receiver in at quarterback and the Saints came in with a good defense. Like the defense didn't make value. So yeah, Dallas ended up with actually 8 points, nowhere near close enough. But spread out exposures, which I think is plus EV, obviously it won the Millie Maker. Something is working. So let's go to another guy, another pro real quick. Just kind of want to look at a couple more, and then we're going to look at a little bit of the afternoon slates and just a couple other contests, and then we will wrap this up. So Papa Gates, he's a DFS pro as well. Finished 31st, pretty close here to the top. And, really it was just kind of one lineup, right? Or a couple lineups, 1,500 there, 500 there. So a couple lineups in the top 100. And he had a Dak, 2 Lamb stack. So he had mix of QB1 and QB2. But this was surprising to me because he had, so this is a Dak stack, but yeah, he had 3 Texans in it. So Singletary, Noah Brown, and Dalton Schultz. And they're all cheap though, right? So I think those builds make a lot more sense when the wide receivers are cheap and they're in good spots. And it's I'm going to get some leverage here playing Dak and Lamb. And a tight end in the flex there. Wide receiver in the flex. Tight end in the flex. You got Dak plus Ferguson and Lamb here. Wide receiver in the flex. Dak plus 2. Tight end in the flex. Plus 2. All these lineups are really contrarian too. All under 100%. This was a Dobbs stack. What a story that guy's had. We get him next Sunday night against Broncos, so that should be fun. And then let's just look at some of his exposures real quick. So Dak, 28% was heavy on Dak. That was the highest exposure under only, I think, 5 quarterbacks above 10% though. So Goff, Geno, Trevor, Baker, and Dak. So, hit with some of these with Goff, Geno, and Dak, doing pretty well. Running back. I think he faded Pollard and Mixon. So 12% Mixon, 11% Pollard. That's how you have a positive ROI day. It was funny because I was talking about this in the Discord. I was like, I think, and this is before I even looked at the numbers, I was like, I think if you faded Mixon and Pollard and you just made sure you got some, Dak and Lamb and Keenan Allen exposure, like you probably had a good day. So Walker and Singletary, these were great leverage spots. Najee did pretty well. So, when your highest exposure running backs all did pretty well, that is the kind of day you're going to have a positive day, even in the Millie Maker. And then Keenan Allen, ton of Keenan Allen. So 54%, that really solidified the day. You had positive leverage on CeeDee Lamb, positive leverage on Keenan Allen, even when 35% Deontay was able to be enough. Under on Amara. So, man, just takes a couple lineups to really get there. And then, had enough just slightly under on McBride, but was even with the field on Laporta, so it didn't get burned there. Had a lot of Ferguson, Ingram. So, a lot of tight end exposure, but we saw a lot of double tight ends, so no surprise. And then one thing that was surprising to me was played 36% Arizona D. But yeah, had some big names, so that makes sense. If you have a lot of Keenan Allen, a lot of CeeDee Lamb, Kenneth Walker was 6,800. It's hard to pay for all these guys without paying down a defense. So just overall lineup construction is something to think about. And then last person I want to take a look at, Chipotle Addict. Everyone knows who Chipotle Addict is. It's one of the top DFS pros. he had a good day. I saw him near the top when, was looking at the top of the leaderboards, kind of sweating the overall slate. And I was like, let's see how he finished. Well, he did pretty good. Surprise, surprise. So Chipotle Addict, let's look at lineups. He had a lot of QB +1 and QB +2. So Dak and Lamb here and Ferguson. Tight end in the flex. He had White, Najee. So, I mean, if you can get 17 points plus from like guys that are in the 4,900 to 6,000 range, that's certainly good enough. It pretty much smashed everywhere else except for Ferguson. So Dak, this is a Dak plus Lamb stack, and Lamb is in the flex. So just really did well on the running backs overall. Christian McCaffrey, Walker. So you got 40 points right there, just about. Dak, Lamb, and Ferguson. So this was a double stack with tight end in the flex, wide receiver in the flex, and tight end in the flex. And this was a Goff +1 plus Amon-Ra with a Keenan Allen bring back. Justin Herbert plus Keenan Allen with an Amon-Ra bring back. So, the bring backs you are seeing when the game environment certainly calls for it, as that one did, and kind of as we expected it to do. So Dak and Goff were the two highest exposures, with Trevor Lawrence being third. God, he's been terrible this year, considering what we expected. I'm sick of it, actually, if we're being honest. I have him on my dynasty team. Enough. Rashad White was the highest exposure. And then, I did find this surprising. Singletary, obviously great play there, but Mixon actually was over the field on Mixon. Now, what saved him, he actually was under on Pollard, so that helped a little bit. And this was crazy to me too. 50% Deontay, but had 39% Keenan Allen. So a lot of Allen, a lot of Lamb. And that's really all that matters. And then did have a good amount of Amon-Ra too. Where is he? 30%. So yeah, it was even with the field. So 30% exposure plus to Allen, CeeDee Lamb, and Amon-Ra. So it kind of made up for the 50% Deontay. So, and then Trey McBride, there we go again. So 46% Trey McBride. That's a lot of tight end, but smashed. So that works. Faded Dallas D. So there you go again. You got a defense that's 4,400, gets 8 points. Faded that D and was able to get positive leverage on Tampa, Cincy, Seattle, and Arizona. So, one pay up option, but it was contrarian. And then obviously, Arizona D didn't do anything, but they were only 2,500. So much easier to absorb, like a 3-point performance from them when they're only 2,500. I think Cincy D had a pretty good day, or not Cincy D, Tampa specifically, going against Will Levis. So that is going to do it for the MME strategy. Oh boy. All right, let's look at maybe one of these smaller contests and kind of see the difference. Now, this isn't small, but it's small enough. And it's single entry. So, for most people, what's great about, here we go, Fantasy Labs. What's great about these kind of contests specifically is you can actually, you only put $12 in and you max the thing, right? And you're not trying to beat out 200,000 people. You're trying to beat out 19,000. So it's just much easier to do. And you will see the score that won it isn't going to be 260. These are 238. So 238 was a low scoring GPP winning score for a contest of this size in a week like this. This is 22 points under what won the Millie Maker. So these contests definitely take some shots here. But you're going to see not as high as the score to win, but, a lot of the same pieces. So Dak and CeeDee Lamb in this one. And obviously no bring back. We had tight end in the flex. Jacksonville D. So 1 point from Jacksonville D. Now, there was another secondary stack of Noah Brown and Tyler Boyd, so that's good. I almost always try to get a secondary stack, specifically in my hand builds, because, you're trying to obviously hit the right stack, but another game environment you want to target, you want to be able to take a piece of that. And then, let's see, Bijan, Rashad White. McBride. So hit the chalk tight end, nailed Lamb, nailed Allen. The Dak +1 with Keenan Allen as a one-off. Bijan, Rashad White is a one-off. Actually, McBride and Bijan, that's another secondary stack. So it had 2 secondary stacks. So just the Rashad White and Keenan Allen one-off. And then Jacksonville D here. So great stuff. Great lineup. 238 points. Let's go ahead and look at the afternoon slate now. Just want to kind of look at a couple things here. I like this. These afternoon slates are smaller. They're much easier to win. You're going to take the general rules that you would have for a main slate. You're not going to use those on these afternoon slates. So you will see a lot of the winners. They will have a player versus their defense. They will have double running back. They will have tight end in the flex. So now this one had Dallas defense, but it didn't have any Giants, I'm guessing, because the Giants didn't do anything, but you will see that with a lot of the top lineups. And so we had over here was a Dak, Lamb, Brandon Cooks, Dallas D, and a pretty high score, right? But keep in mind, this was the slate where all the scoring was happening in the afternoon games. So not very surprising to see, but both Robinson, so Bryant and Bijan. Now you had another secondary stack here, Jalen Guyton and Amon-Ra, and then Trey McBride. So it was heavy on Dak. Avi. Now this one, second lineup, which scored, 300. Pretty surprising, though, to see it do so well and not have Lamb in it. But Cook smashed, and Gallup did pretty good as well, 15 points. So now this is what I was talking about, 2 running backs from the same game, Brian Robinson and Kenneth Walker. You do see that a lot. And Lockett was in this lineup as well. And then Amon-Ra and Laporta. So, Laporta could have had a much better day. Obviously, Brock White didn't catch his touchdown. I don't know if you could tell or not. I'm kind of salty on that. And then this one had Dak and Pollard. I had a Dak and Pollard and like Brandon Cooks and like CeeDee Lamb on slot stack that probably could have won something. It was pretty high in a single entry large field GPP, except for the fact that it had Pollard and absolutely crushed it. But everywhere else smashed. And, that's kind of somewhat similar to this line. It didn't get enough from Eckler. But it had Amon-Ra, had Trey McBride, had Brandon Cooks. So a lot of the right pieces, 197 points. So pretty good stuff. I think that will wrap it up. Hope you all enjoyed the week in review a little earlier. I'm sure, I record this at 5 a.m. on Mountain Standard Time. And this will obviously be coming out a little later on the East Coast. But if you like this kind of content, you like this a little earlier, hit that like button, comment, let me know. Let me know how the slate went for you. We have so much content coming your way. Keep a lookout for the cash lineup review, in addition to Showdown content this week and all the other main slate content coming your way. So thanks for joining me. We will see you all next week.